And so we get a little bit of Aunt Darla there. Interestingly, I don't have my dad. My dad appears, but he doesn't say anything in the play. He's just representative of this ideal because my mother adored my father and my dad, and so he's this idealized person. We know if we know from anyone who is reading or watching a cycle of these plays, if some insane person ever wanted to do all of these plays, over the course of a couple of years at some theater, we would know that Eddie Wagner, George Wagner, exists and what he was like a little bit. But in here, he's just a representative. And we get some of the antagonism between Jessica and my mother. We get that kind of thing. But it's basically, I could have, and this is a good example of a play where I cut back. I could have had the hospice woman, the Christian woman. I could have done a couple of scenes of conflict with me yelling at her, as I did in real life. But it wasn't necessary for this play. That's a superfluous person. I don't want to have her there. It's more about Danny and his mother. And in a sense, this could also, and in a way, a lot of these plays have similarities with 3 or 4 other plays, and they'll interlock one way. For example, this is similar to the Henry Miller play because this is about a person dying. It's a different context, but Danny is looking back on the death of his mother or the death of his co-worker. Other than that, they're dissimilar. This play is not as consciously poetic. The Henry Miller play also harkened back to the play with the black sisters, black people, death, and we have the death of the mother there, which then also, this is a companion piece to that play, too. There the mother is dying of Alzheimer's. Here she's dying of her own choice.
The emotional wallop comes through the how rather than the what to. Most of the deaths are usually revealed right at the beginning in all of your writing. You don't necessarily find out, whereas I think from Death of the Salesman to all sorts of examples, they use that as sort of a melodramatic device at the end. That gives them a big emotional wallop at the end, rather than with this, where it's very obvious that Helen is going to die at the end. But you don't know exactly how everything's going to do. And the ending isn't melodramatic at all. With them just walking in and finding her dead.
Well, this play isn't about the death of Helen Wagner. It's about the dying. There's a difference. Her death, we know is going to come. That's not the important part. It's how she's dying, and in the land of wonderful dreams, the poem here, the passings is in here. As you said, I also referenced consciously the prisoner titles for the episode because there are 17 of them, and 17 I said that's too good to pass up, and so I work in subtly some of the things from some of the titles, like the girl who would be death. We have the woman in blue in that section, in that little scene. And
well, you have layers upon layers. You have the poems, you have the prisoner titles, the lady in blue. You have all these passing references that add up after a while. I wanted to get to one specific one, so go on while I'm looking for it.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of them. The general. Then we had, and I have a lot of these plays. The Dirge of the Empire State that playing in the background. And in some of the later plays that I've done after this one here, I've tried to cut back on some of the poems. I don't want to rely too much on one particular gimmick. Day 9, Many Happy Returns, is the shortest one. Lights Up on Helen Wagner. And then Danny just basically, Happy Birthday, Many Happy Returns, Happy Merry Christmas, yeah, so many, everything's, they all come back to me now. I mean, that's the shortest of the scenes there. Lights Up, Danny's there, and it's just a little moment, and so you get a whole different thing. That it's your funeral, a change of mind.
Yes, I want to talk about this one. This one fooled me when I read it, and I'm a good reader, and I rarely fool. But as you think that it's Helen's dream as you're beginning this, and then it's revealed at the end that it's Danny's dream. So there's a structural difference there, and it just comes out of nowhere. That this confrontation between Darla and Helen was actually all within Danny and not within Helen.
Yeah. Well, that is that it is Danny's version because Danny wasn't there. Danny is relating what his mother had
So
told him.
that's actually a good reason for why she walks in that particular scene.
No, that's a good point. But yeah, and these are little things, and it's one of those things too. It's interesting that you pick up on that. When I read Chin writing about my poems, or he did a good analysis of my Knowing Dick chapter from A Norwegian in the Family, and the 2 or 3 plays he's looked at. It's interesting to hear people pick up on those little things, because just hearing you say that, yeah, that's a really good interpretation, and it's a good raison d'etre for why Helen walks, because it's not her aspect, it's not her memory of it, it's Danny telling about what he's heard about her. So yeah, and like I said, a lot of these plays, they interlock with each other in this way and that way, and it's just,
poems have a good reason for being used too, in the sense that it's an emotional payoff when she's seeing all of your poems projected behind you, and you can't see them at the time.
Yeah.
You also can't see Eddie, but you see your poem Bohemian Rhapsody at the end, or at least it's implied that you've come to some kind of understanding after your mother died.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. That there are these ways to try to show the kind. How do you show someone having a change of mind or an apotheosis here? And having Danny finally see glimpses of his own poetry that his mother could, even though his mother admits that she doesn't understand all of it, is an interesting way to play with those ideas. And it's one of those things that sort of amazes me. Like here, the play ends here. Danny is talking. He says, "What? I didn't understand what you were saying." And then the last comments are, Danny's conversation continues improvised under the sound of the same woodwind instrument flute recorder from the end of days 11 and 15, as it plays the same wistful music that is melancholy but profound. Jessica sits on the other side of the bed from Helen's corpse and just sighs as Danny continues to talk on his cell phone with his back to the audience. And just so you know, I misspelled. There's no I in his, so I just put it there. To the audience, Helen and Eddie finally break their gaze on the scene, and Helen blows a kiss to Jessica, then to Danny, and the two of them walk off slowly, unnoticed by the living, out of the lighted area. Danny and Jess continue as they are for another half a minute or more until the music, the scrolling poem, and the light end abruptly in unison.